What's something that you'd like to know how to do? Or something that you'd like to at least know enough about that you could then know what it is that you don't yet know? Something that you've avoided even looking into because you're scared to learn just how much you need to learn. Whatever it is, if I told you to stop right where you are and think about whether it would be achievable within a week, would it be? Maybe not. In fact, I hope not. But what if you took a week to prioritize your real goal, the one you're always thinking about but never acting upon, and you chose for once to focus on that goal instead of on everything else? Would it be possible to at least move yourself closer to it? I'm trying to learn to speak Swedish. I'm Australian, I've never been to Sweden. It's kind of a long story, but learning Swedish properly, fluently, to the point that I feel comfortable and able to express myself well the way I do in English has been an obsession of mine for a while now. And the dream of many language learners, people like myself, is to quit their job, go to a country where the language is spoken, and just learn the language full time. Now, is that achievable for me within a week? No, definitely not. Not the quitting my job and moving to the country part, but the learning the language full-time part, that bit, just maybe. So last week, I wanted to see if it would be possible to spend as much time learning Swedish as a full-time employee typically spends at work, with the slight cheat being that I was allowed to use the weekend if I needed it. Now, a few people questioned if my goal of 36 hours was a little bit low to count as full-time, but that ended up not mattering because I rolled past that on the 4th day and eventually reached 57 hours in the 7-day period. And I still did normal stuff too. My wife and I have a 2-week-old son, so we've had people visiting for cuddles, we had a doctor's appointment, and all the typical newborn stuff. And I've also been careful not to ignore our 9-year-old, who's obviously experiencing some changes right now. I've been hanging out with him, reading and playing sport, just like normal. I started most days with 2 to 3 hours of reading a novel with the accompanying audiobook. And then I might do some flashcards, which would generally include new words and phrases from the novel. Then in the afternoon, a couple of times I went running with headphones on because I'm trying to make sure that exercise happens no matter what, since I'm not nearly as fit as I used to be. But I at least did do almost 3 hours of exercise in the week, which is better than nothing. Just so we're clear, this is of course entirely fake. I'm not even reading this book. I didn't film a single shot during the actual Swedish challenge week because I didn't have time, obviously. I also, while I'm interrupting the flow, just want to give a shout out to another YouTuber called Language Come Up. He got in touch with me on Instagram saying, I kind of mentioned a very similar challenge on my YouTube channel a couple of weeks before you mentioned yours. I don't suppose you kind of might have stolen that idea, but he was very polite about it. And I've got to say, no, I didn't steal the idea. I hadn't actually seen his channel, but I can understand how he feels because I've also had videos basically pulled out from under me, not stolen, just coincidence. And that's exactly what happened here. And I understand that he even took a week off work to do his language challenge. I think it's up on his channel now, so just by way of apology for the bad timing of my video, I thought I should leave a link in the description to his channel. Throughout the week, I also had a couple of lessons with a tutor over Skype, and I would typically spend the evenings watching YouTube in Swedish, of course. Then I was also taking new words and phrases generally from that YouTube and putting them into my flashcard deck. Now, that wasn't actually born out of discipline. I didn't even plan on doing that. It's just that I found that in this new sea of Swedish that I was immersing myself in, there would be so many new words and phrases that I thought that's really useful. I have to remember how to say that, and flashcards were the easiest way to make that happen. Swedish YouTube has been my favourite part of this. I've discovered 5 or 6 awesome and hilarious channels that I'd never have been able to enjoy to the same level if I hadn't have committed to doing basically everything possible in Swedish. You'll often hear people say that Swedes speak English, so understanding Swedish is unnecessary. And this is a whole other video, but all these Swedish YouTubers who make a living from their videos are essentially making a living from their personality, their sense of humour, and their charisma. To say that they could show those same qualities to the same extent if they spoke English is just plain wrong. I've got the same mug, so that was obviously a smooth transition. Okay, so you might be in one of two camps here. Either you might be thinking, dude, so what? You went for some runs with headphones on, you had some conversations, watched some YouTube, and read a novel. Big deal. Who couldn't do that? Or you might be at the other end thinking, dude, no way. I could not speak the language well enough to have conversations or read a novel or watch YouTube, and even if I could, who would have 8 hours a day for that? Look, both things are true in their own way, and both are kind of the answer to one another. If I'm honest with myself, an ordinary week would probably consist of consuming 12 to 15 hours just of English-speaking YouTube. That's even when I'm working on videos and doing Swedish. You don't notice it if you're not counting, but a lot of people spend easily that much time consuming content every week. So even just replacing that makes a huge difference. But on the other hand, if you think that 8 hours a day doesn't sound like very much if you're not doing anything too difficult, bear in mind that that may be thanks to a high level of the language that you already have. For example, I would not recommend that someone who only understands 20 to 45% of what they hear spend 8 hours a day in native speaker content, because yes, it will be good for your comprehension, but you will also wreck yourself mentally. You will end up spending 24 hours a day of your time on the language because you'll just need the other 16 to recover. So the short answer as to how I was able to do this is that I'd already put myself in a position that meant it was a stretch for me rather than an impossible leap, and it's something I feel we could all do a little bit more of. Impossible leaps can be tempting because we look at where we're going to land if we pull it off, ignoring the fact that we're almost certainly not going to land there, and that the leap itself may even be a little bit dangerous. So where did I actually land? How much closer to my goal did I actually get? Okay, I can't go to Sweden right now, but when I do, I want to be as fluent as possible, and you might be wondering how much my Swedish actually improved over the week. Am I noticeably better than I was before? Yes, definitely yes. Some of the most tangible improvements have been that, although I still don't understand every single word of every YouTube video, I now understand enough that it's not noticeably different to watching it in English. I used to not be able to follow a lot of videos, but after this week I never drop the thread entirely, even when it's extremely fast.
Sen var det en bra kyss, sedan vill hon komma dit, sedan vill hon inte vara kvar, sedan vill hon gå, sedan kommer hon inte tillbaka och sedan nu är de ihop. Va?
My understanding of what was going on in the novel I was reading increased to the point that reading that particular novel wasn't any more taxing than it would have been in English. I could drop in and out of the audiobook without even thinking about it and just know where it must be up to. It's something that we do in our native language, so automatically we don't even notice. At first, my spoken fluency didn't seem to improve, but a week after the experiment was over, I had some conversations in which I felt much less encumbered, even if only by my own need for assurance, like I would go into long sentences without knowing for sure whether I could finish them, but also being confident that I would be able to. But the effects that were more interesting were actually the less tangible and more experiential kind of ones. For example, on the first night, I went to total up everything that I'd done to write it in my diary, and I sort of felt like my arithmetic was a little bit slow. I was having trouble doing very basic numbers, and I realized that I was still thinking in Swedish. Now, on the first night, I was quite quick to realize this and sort of think, that's the problem. But by the third night, this had moved well outside my general awareness. Now, I should mention here that my thoughts in Swedish are not necessarily good ones. They're simple and often quite illogical. Picture it a bit like having a 5-year-old's brain take over your own. It kind of feels like they're saying normal things for a while, but what you're really hearing is a bunch of sensible sounding nonsense as your brain tries to assimilate all the language that it's been picking up. But my favourite moment was when, for some reason, I clicked on a video in English. I don't know why, I can't remember what it was, but it sort of felt okay when I was watching it. But then I clicked back to a video in Swedish, and the second they started talking, it felt like my brain found its natural rhythm again. I can sort of describe it as like being given a drug that had tricked my brain into thinking that its native language was actually Swedish. So it definitely made a difference, a bigger difference than I initially thought, and it was a week worth doing just to show myself that 8 hours a day is not only possible, but actually very achievable. But did it get me any closer to my goal, the one I mentioned before? I'm not going to take the advice of randoms on the internet and up and move my family of 4 to the other end of the world, no. But I do want to get to Sweden, and not just that, I want to make a video in Swedish with a Swedish YouTuber. I don't yet know who, I don't know what city, what the video will be about, any of that, but it's something I want to make happen, and I'm taking small leaps all the time, like this week of full-time Swedish, in order to make it happen. Another leap that I've taken recently is to start a Patreon. Now, I know, I get it, it's annoying, every YouTuber and their flippin' dog has a Patreon. But I've been thinking for months now about what value I can offer to real language learners, people who are actually doing this and not just pretending to do it, and what I've landed on is writing. Now, I know it sounds a little bit soft, but the thing with writing is, 1, I'm a much better writer than I am video maker, trust me, and 2, writing affords me a depth that videos do not. For example, there's one on there already about the way I handled this week, what I did to get it all set up, what I would do differently next time. It just goes into a bit more detail on the stuff that you can do if you were actually to do this, and I'm going to plan to have one there every week, a new one that is. So I do think it offers genuine value to language learners, stuff that you can read and walk away from and know what to do with and actually get somewhere. But if you can't do that, I totally understand, of course. Using any of the links in the description can also help me out, or just leave us a comment. Now, I know a bunch of you did the same challenge at the same time or a very near time. Let me know how you went with it. I know that some people did like a lot more than me, if you can believe that's possible, but I was also pleased to hear from people who did like 5 or 6 hours, saying that that was like 4 hours more than normal. So whether you did this or you're still doing it, keep letting me know in the comments how it's going for you. Also let me know what I can add to my Swedish ambitions. At the moment that's the only one, but who else should I try and meet? What videos should I try and make? All these suggestions help me to keep making better and better videos, and hopefully one day soon one of those videos will come to you from Sweden in Swedish. Your goals should show your bravery, especially your long-term goals. I hope that they're not achievable within a week. They should be bigger than that. But not everything needs to be an impossible leap. Instead, think about where you want to land eventually, and then ask yourself, what is the next step? What is the next rock I need to get to? Whatever your goals, there is something achievable that you can do right now, so that the leap that is currently impossible becomes possible and then becomes reality. Take that step today so that you can make that leap tomorrow.